When working with custom dashboards, there are lots and lots of different widgets to choose from. So you can see all the different widgets on the left-hand side. However, I'm going to run you through some example widgets that people don't often jump to, but I think they work really, really well in the elemental use case, especially for tracking things like errors. So the first one I want to highlight is the polystat widget. So what this essentially is each hexagon is a unique value of some grouping field. This is being powered by unindexed monitoring logs directly from customer S3. So you can see here that I have a logging query here. I've set it to type logs and the level of monitoring. We have event type transcode error. And I've grouped by session ID. What I'm looking at is the health of the sessions based on the number of errors. If errors is 0, we have no error. That's brilliant. If it's 1, low error. And if it's red, which is 3, it becomes high error. And what that translates to is I can zoom in on this and say, well, this has got no error. This has got 1 error. That session ID may have a problem there, you know? And that's pretty interesting because it means that you get a really, really powerful insight at a very, very high level. And you can literally dive deep. So, I mean, just you can zoom in and go, oh, that's an error, that's an error, that's an error, that's an error. You get a nice visualization of what's going on. So the polystat is something definitely not to be overlooked. Super powerful. You can imagine this grouping origins. You can imagine it grouping certain streams, endpoints that are being serviced by CloudFront based on HTTP errors. There are lots and lots of different options here for visualizing this. I think this is a very, very powerful, very information-dense way of visualizing stream health. The next is the gauge, and specifically the gauge in multi-stat mode. So how does that work? Notice that we have a gauge type here. Now, when this is driven by metrics. This is actually an event to metric. Once again, if you look at that CX docs total, that's a dead giveaway that this has been generated from logs coming in this case, unindexed logs. You can see that we've added up the total amount of events because it's counting the transcode events and it's labeled them by events. And if I get rid of the by event very quickly, what I end up with is a single metric. It's basically the sum of all of them. When I add by event in, it breaks down into various different things. Now, there's different ways of styling this. Put it the way I like it, but you can see here, for example, you can have arcs, so you can have your threshold as you can with any other gauge. By the way, if you're not familiar with gauges, please jump over to the Getting to Know Coralogix course. We explain these in detail, but essentially on the outer ring here is a threshold, on the inner ring is the actual value. I've just picked any values here because it's going to depend on your business context about what should be read and so on. If you prefer this view, obviously that's fine. Me personally, I think what's really, really nice about getting rid of the arcs is you get much bolder colors, and by switching to the background, this becomes kind of like a simpler version of that polystat above, where we're actually rendering out the figures themselves. So the distinction between these two things, I would say, is this. The polystat is really powerful when you're looking to monitor the health of lots of different resources, and you want to visualize that. And the multistat gauge that you've got here is very powerful when you want to see the actual values themselves of a typically smaller number of large numbers of resources. The polystat's really powerful. For a small number of resources where the numbers themselves really matter, then the multistat is a really nice use case here. So in this case, I've grouped by particular transcoding operations. I can aggregate by a number of different factors. For example, I can look at the percentiles around the response time from the ad decision server. I can look at the different types of errors that are occurring. I can look at the different types of requests that are coming in to our various different streams, and I can visualize them as sort of, gigabytes per minute, if you like, on each of my different origins, so I can deeply understand where the traffic is going. So those are two really nice examples. The third is a little bit more obvious, but I think in Coralogix it's got a really nice added value to it. So this is a data table. Data tables simply render out events. Once again, if you're unfamiliar with the data table, Getting to Know Coralogix course, we get into that in detail. You can visualize it in event and aggregation mode. We've chosen events here. And you can see here that I basically said, give me all the transcoding errors. And that's it. But I've also selected the columns that I'm interested in. I want the session ID, the event description about what happened, and then the transcode request ID as well. And this gives me a really powerful view of what was actually happening at that stage. I can use this to then go and investigate information further, and I can dive further into what was going on. So this is a really nice at-a-glance view of detailed information directly from the archive with no dependency on indexing. So what we've done here is we've mixed high-performance metrics with direct remote query to customer S3. And we've done it using various different widgets that you may not have thought of, but I think they apply super, super well in the elemental use case.